Доброго дня, шановні колеги. Вітаю всіх в українському.
Good morning, dear colleagues. We welcome you to the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. We start with the first briefing that we are organizing to meet the first anniversary of the Maidan. We are talking about the most outstanding heroes who stood to the end and about people whom the entire Ukraine became to know. It's interesting for us how their fates have changed. I'd like to give the floor to Mykhaylo Havrylyuk, the first Cossack of Maidan, about whom Ukraine got to know in January this year, and I'm sure you know him very well. So he'll tell you about how his fate changed, how his life changed. Glory to Ukraine, everybody. Well, what can I say? Life has changed very much. 9 months ago, I was a simple person, an ordinary Cossack. I was doing what everybody was doing. I was surviving on the money that I had and had all the problems that the entire Ukrainian people have. And that's what I'm doing now. But I was in Maidan, and the God has entrusted me with such responsibility, and it turned out that I was caught by the police. I was unclothed, and that's why I became known. I became recognizable in Ukraine. I didn't sit on my hands. However, I continued my fight on behalf of the Ukrainian people. Then I was in the anti-terrorist operation zone. I was fighting there, and my friends came to the anti-terrorist operation zone and said, "Listen, Mike, the war is all very well, but we should also fight within the country. There's a lot of traitors, and they are within the country, and the most scary enemy is the internal enemy, the enemy that we see. We see and we fight them, and the enemy within is a hidden enemy. We should first detect them and then fight." And they told me, let's go to the parliament and let's make it so that there's an MP who will take care of Ukraine. So I agreed and said, let's try. And we started to fight. We were given the chance to fight in majority constituency 95. So we won there. So at the moment, I, an ordinary person, Cossack Havrylyuk, became a member of the parliament. So my life has changed very much. And I will, of course, fight for Ukraine. I will fight for our Ukrainian people. And we are already fighting because people come with their issues, with their problems. And yesterday we went to protect the interests of our people. I think this will be what I'll be doing in the future. As Taras Shevchenko said, fight and you will win. Thank you very much. I think that I have a question. How do you see yourself in the parliament? Whom do you want to fight there? Well, first of all, I told you that there are corrupt people there. Secondly, there are traitors who are traitors to our soldiers, traitors to our Ukraine, and they live not for the good of Ukraine, but only to become richer. And if something bad happens, they just get their cases and go abroad. And we should tell them that Ukraine is not for getting richer. We will detect such people and will fight them and will bring them to responsibility. And in order to bring them to responsibility, we should remove MPs' immunity so that everyone is responsible for their own sins. But as we know, everybody is immune now, and they are actually untouchables. They cannot be brought to responsibility. Let's take, for instance, Mr. Tsarev and other people who had their hands in starting the war. But we should bring them to responsibility for instigating people, for giving them arms to kill their brothers. But he could not be brought to responsibility because he is immune as an MP. Okay, we understand. To remove the immunity, number one priority. What else? Well, the agenda, is about, in order to start to rebuild our state, we have to make sure that everyone understands that they will be responsible for their actions. And of course, we should conduct lustration so that every official, every MP are responsible for their property and assets, so that they publish where they got this property or assets, how they were able to buy those mansions and those cars. So I think that strict lustration should be our number two priority, so that our Ukraine purifies our authorities step by step, and so that our Ukraine starts with clean thoughts and clear ideas. And our clean work, pure work should be glorious, and the people who are in the parliament take care of Ukraine, and Ukrainian people care about Ukraine. And don't forget that they are elected in order to serve the people. Today we will know the final results of the elections. What's your opinion on the composition of the new parliament? Those who are there and will work in the parliament. Well, what can I say about them at the moment? Before we went there, they had the same opinions, to fight, and to fight for the interests of the Ukrainian people. At the moment, I can't tell you anything, because until you work with that person, until you see how they work, you can't really tell about them. But as soon as we get to work, I will tell you who works for the benefit of Ukraine and who not. In order to be successful in the parliament, MPs have to have a skill to agree and to build a coalition. With whom are you going to build a coalition? With those people who will work for the benefit of Ukraine. Okay, let's go back to Maidan. How do you assess? Almost a year has passed. Has Maidan realized their goals for what people fought in Maidan? At the moment, no one has felt anything as far as what we stood for. The life was hard, but it became even harder because we now have war in addition to everything. In my constituency number 95, when I went to my voters, I was telling them about myself, and people were asking me and telling me a lot. So I got an impression that our Ukraine is composed only of some grief, because everyone has their own problems and griefs, and no one heeds anyone. Our teachers and other working people are very, very hard-pressed to live at 1,500 hryvnias a month, and we have to rectify this and to change this. Until now, nothing has changed, so that our Ukrainian people approach the European life at least a bit. So I don't see this, the Ukrainian people don't see this. Why hasn't anything changed? First of all, the old system was working for itself. It is still in place. No one has broken the spinal cord. I think that we will do this. And secondly, we have war, and all the efforts are aimed at the victory. at closing the border, and so that the third force, Russia, does not hinder us from building our state. What is the biggest achievement of Maidan? Well, people had their hopes and expectations, and they are not justified yet. But still, what is the biggest achievement of Maidan? Look, I thought just a moment ago that grief is uniting our, and trials are uniting our Ukrainian people. We have become united, and if anything happens, people help each other. And this should be in the first turn, this unanimity and cohesiveness. If we are as one, we will win. And if people see any injustice, they rise and win. And my last question is, in fact, you became famous within a year. You're being recognized at in the streets. Your face was Ukraine's face on the Day of Independence this year. So how do you feel yourself when famous? Well, honestly, it's normal, same as it was before. I am calm. I don't have a crown on my head. I'm an ordinary person, and I will remain an ordinary person. Thank you very much. It was very pleasant for me to communicate with the ordinary person, Mykhaylo Havrylyuk, and we still have some questions. Could you please tell us a bit about your biography? Where are you from? Well, everything started from Maidan. Before this, I was born in Chernivtsi region, Khotin district, the village of Yerivka. I lived there. I graduated from the secondary school. I had to go to the boarding school. But the main thing is that from the very childhood, my parents have instilled love to brother, sister, and Ukraine and Ukrainian people. My education is incomplete secondary education, but for the future, I will be able to say I have a higher education. I wasn't going to tell about this, but I began to study again, and I believe that very soon I will have a very cool diploma. How do you plan to live and work having a salary of 5,000 hryvnia after tax? And where do you plan to live? And how do you plan to work? Don't you think that salary for MPs should be raised? Look, how shall I live? I have to disappoint you that this is a very huge money. I was making my living at 1,500. This is just crazy money. 5,000. Live in a more modest way, eat less, but of course the salary should be raised because you can't allow anything over the top for you for 5,000. I think that we will think about this very conscientiously so that every Ukrainian who works, including our pensioners, have their salaries raised. Any other questions? No, thank you very much. We will expect you in the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center as a lawmaker, as an MP, and we'll talk to you in your new status. Thank you. Be healthy.